Romeo and Juliet, a true spy story. From the archives of Espionage. Part 1. Arrival in Paris. It was a warm morning in March 1939 when the train from Rome pulled into Paris. Suddenly, Italian photographer Romeo Silavio sprang up from his seat in panic, as if awakening from a deep sleep. Have we arrived in Paris?" he asked the passenger in front of him, his French broken and clumsy. The man gave a curt, annoyed nod. Clearly, traveling with this famous Italian photographer, whose pictures filled Italian newspapers and magazines, had not been a pleasant experience. Romeo stumbled with his 3 massive bags, dropping one every time he picked another. A train inspector finally took pity on him and helped him off the train. Romeo looked as if he had just escaped a war zone. At the time, it wasn't hard to hail a taxi in Paris. Romeo managed to get to his hotel in the city center, surrounded by his oversized cases packed with clothes, tools, and heavy camera equipment. Part 2. The Charming Stranger. At the hotel, Romeo's charm was undeniable. He talked. A lot. Loudly. But he was polite, generous, and treated everyone kindly. He told everyone, from staff to passing guests, that he was sent by a major Italian magazine to document the Eiffel Tower and its upcoming renovations. His photos fascinated everyone. Guests gathered around to hear him explain angles, lighting, and composition with such passion and grace that they couldn't help but admire him. But then, something changed. Romeo stopped joining the evening conversations. He came and went in silence. No more charm, no more laughter. Eventually, the front desk clerk visited his room. "Mr. Silavio, what's wrong?" he asked gently. Romeo hesitated, then broke down. "My money is gone," he confessed. "Every last franc. I've been walking to the tower every day. I haven't eaten in 2 days. Except the hotel breakfast." The shocked clerk asked, "But what about the magazine?" "They paid half up front. The rest comes only after they receive the final photos. And I was careless. I spent too much." The clerk studied him for a moment and then said, "You're an artist in Paris, Mr. Silavio. No nationality matters when it comes to talent. Leave it to me." By Monday morning, Romeo had a contract with a major French publication, a generous advance, and a new spark in his eyes. Part 3. The Double Life. Romeo moved into a modest apartment in the Latin Quarter. He became the toast of Parisian media, especially after capturing a brilliant portrait of Baron Chevalier, which made the front page of a top financial magazine. Requests flooded in from celebrities, generals, and even military units, but Romeo refused to leave the Latin Quarter, claiming its artistic soul inspired his creativity. The real reason was darker. One evening, in a quiet Parisian suburb, Romeo arrived alone. He sat on the 3rd bench in a public park. A man appeared. Von Dar, a German intelligence officer sent by Himmler himself. Von Dar greeted him in Italian. "Your radio message last night was excellent." Romeo smiled. "So the transmitter is working well?" "Perfectly," Von Dar replied. Then he asked, "Are you ready for the next phase?" "I'm very close." "How?" Romeo smiled proudly. "I've been invited tomorrow to photograph General Maurice Godeau and his senior officers at a private reception." Von Dar's eyes sharpened. "Cavalry command?" "Yes," Romeo replied. "The French cavalry." Von Dar leaned in, serious. "Strengthen your connection with General Godeau, whatever it takes. Earn his trust. befriend his officers, or even join the cavalry yourself. Part 4. Romeo meets Juliet. The next night, Romeo entered a grand reception hosted by General Bordeaux, and there he saw her. Juliet Bordeaux, 22, elegant, beautiful, floating across the room like silk and cream. He asked a nearby officer, breathless, Who is she?" The man whispered urgently, "Lower your voice. That's Juliet, the general's wife, and he's extremely possessive." Romeo's eyes, "Lower your voice. That's Juliet, the general's wife, and he's extremely possessive." Romeo's eyes widened. Juliet was pure grace. The general, on the other hand, was twice her age, stern and gruff, with a huge curled mustache. Romeo couldn't look away, and Juliet noticed. Her cheeks flushed with color. She tried to ignore him, then looked back. Moments later, she slipped away to a private balcony. Romeo followed. "Has the queen of the evening grown bored?" he asked softly. "I just needed fresh air," she whispered. He kissed her hand. "How I envy the air that touches your lips." She blushed. He whispered, "Romeo, please, call me Romeo, my Lady Juliet." She laughed. "Romeo and Juliet? How scandalous." "No," he whispered. "How true." Part 5. The Spy and the Lover. That night, Juliet invited Romeo to meet her in the garden at midnight. They kissed under the moonlight. Passionate. Real. They became lovers. Romeo had never felt such joy until he returned home and found von Dar waiting in his apartment. The German smiled wickedly. "Congratulations," he said, lighting a cigarette. "You've just infiltrated the French cavalry." Romeo turned pale. "What do you mean?" "You've won Juliet. Now you're inside. Use her." And so Romeo obeyed. Through Juliet, he attended more parties, met more officers, and photographed their faces, their homes, their strategies. He reported everything back to Berlin. Eventually, Juliet arranged for Romeo to photograph the military stables, home of France's elite cavalry horses. Von Dar gave him a plastic vial. Inside, a needle. "Tomorrow, when you're alone with a horse, inject it. Then, destroy the vial. Understand?" Romeo did as instructed. He never asked why. Later, Von Dar revealed the needle carried anthrax. In 2 weeks, the horses would die. The French cavalry would collapse. Romeo begged to stay in Paris with Juliet. Von Dar refused. Orders from Himmler returned to Berlin. Romeo cried. Von Dar snapped, "A real spy doesn't fall in love. Juliet was a tool. Nothing more." Part 6. Tragic Endings. Romeo returned to Berlin, received a huge reward, but he locked himself in his apartment, heartbroken. Back in Paris, Juliet searched for him desperately. She fell ill with grief. Doctors couldn't help her. One by one, the horses began dying. General Bordeaux was helpless. 14 days later, Germany invaded France. The Maginot Line failed. France surrendered. When the borders reopened, Romeo rushed back to Paris. But it was too late. Juliet had died, her tears still on her cheeks. Romeo lost his mind. He wandered outside her home, starving, broken, whispering her name to the wind. Soon after, he died of heartbreak. He begged to be buried beside her. But the Parisians refused. He was an enemy spy, a traitor. Romeo and Juliet never met again. War had torn them apart. So had death. But their story lived on. One of the strangest, saddest tales in the eternal war of shadows. The spy called Romeo. The woman named Juliet.